listening to, you are absolutely listening to the George Espenlaub Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie!
Well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. It is Friday afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, but nonetheless, we're at the Funny Farm. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, thank you for giving me both of your ears for the next hour and a few minutes. We are delighted that you've taken the time to tune in with us. I hope that your day went fine. This is Friday, and it is the beginning of the weekend. For some of you that are listening, it's already Saturday, if that makes sense to some. But nonetheless, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for tuning in to the George Espenlaub Show, and we come to you live from the Funny Farm in a place called our world. Before we bring the Neil Haley Show on tonight, I want to make this very important announcement. Tonight, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to be doing a live stream show on the George Espenlaub Show page in Facebook and into YouTube. Our guest tonight is no stranger to the show, either by way of radio or by the way of live stream. It is none other than our very own Maxine. Maxine is coming to the farm tonight, and she's not coming to do what she normally does. She's coming to share with our viewers and our listeners her new venture. She will be beginning a new venture next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday. And we will be making the announcement tonight. Maxine will be sharing with us what she's going to be doing, how she's going to be doing it, and who will be the people that are involved in this new venture. So you don't want to miss it. Tune in tonight. Simply go to Facebook and the George Espenlaub Show. That's the George Espenlaub Show at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will be having with us the lovely Maxine. She will be sharing with us her new venture. And then, immediately or a short time thereafter, we will be coming back on the radio for our Friday night show. And we will be sharing some things. We will be making the announcement that Maxine made on the live stream show. So please make sure, got things falling over here, please make sure that you tune in tonight after our live stream show, because we'll be making the announcement for some people that wasn't able to watch the live stream. And so, with no further ado, as Charlie always says, now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, the Neil Haley Show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Rob Roselli Show. And I'm excited to welcome to the program conspiracist and author and much more, Rob Roselli. Rob, how are you? I was thinking about
good, Neil.
I was thinking about just how, now Trump has beat the trial. Now he can focus on specifically watching the biggest joke in the world of a Democratic primary, because I'm just shocked. There's really no one that's really taking hold in this race at all.
Well, again, and let me just start off with this. Before we've run out of time. BoxingSunglasses.com, and I'll try and remember to say it every week at least once. God's simple salvation plan, because that's most important right now, because we never know where these conversations are going to go. But knowing that the Creator of the universe and His Son, who walked the earth 2,000 years ago as the perfect sacrifice for all humankind, is ultimately in charge of this whole mess. And in Psalm chapter 2, God sits up there in heaven and basically says He will laugh at these people. And I'm not necessarily saying that is a literal, ha ha ha, I'm going to kill you all kind of thing, but in a more of a divine sense or a mockery, as we will, I guess, kind of elaborate on in the next few minutes of the show. Period. Now, that being said, to your specific point, remember, we've talked about this in the past. I think we spent the whole show on this, sometime in the past. It was brought up again last week and the weeks before. Remember, one of the chapters, I think, of the Old Testament that most applies to the current situation is that of Job chapter 12. Basically, these people, and I said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm talking about Pelosi, Schiff, Nadler, these so-called Democrats, the media talking heads, which basically are the face. They're the face of the un-American genocidal complex, because as we've talked about, the un-American genocidal complex, or what people commonly call now the quote deep state, or the Rockefeller, Rothschild Federal Reserve System, basically owns the media, academia, et cetera, as we've talked about many times on the show. But anyway, so the face of that quote conspiracy, those names I just mentioned, they are as compromised and as desperate and as dishonest, sleazy and stupid, and ridiculous as they seem. Nancy Pelosi ripping up the State of the Union address. I think the last time we talked, Neil, was last Tuesday. I think the State of the Union address was Tuesday night. And I said the same thing last week. And there goes Pelosi acting basically literally like a petulant 5-year-old and ripping up the president's speech. So that's the perfect microcosm of what I'm talking about. Okay, and it also ties into another subject that I mentioned, that I sincerely believe that this is Revelation 13, the deadly head wound, that Trump is applying the deadly head wound to the beast. And if the proper interpretation of Revelation 13 is not literal, for the most part, and of course there's literal, manifestations in real time, and this four-dimensional physical existence we call reality, 3 space and 1 time. But anyway, for the most part, it's meant to be symbolic. And anybody that tells you otherwise, which are a lot of so-called biblical scholars, in my humble opinion, do not know what the blank they are talking about. But that being said, let's just back up and say that the 7 heads, if you go back to Isaiah chapter 7 and what a head really is, it's a political system. It's a city, it's a capital, and in fact, a specific leader. And it's a whole body, but anyway, we don't have time to get into that right now. But anyway, for the purposes of right now, I'm of the mindset that Trump is applying as we speak, the deadly head wound to this political clown show known as the modern Democratic Party, the pro-abortion, genocidal, climate change freaks, and all these other people. He's applying the head wound, okay? And unfortunately, let me just stick with that for a second. That will continue. I think you're going to see more exposures, more Jeffrey Epstein-like exposures, more exposures of Hillary Clinton, of all these people, the criminality that's been going on in Washington, D.C. for the past 100 years, as these politicians have basically been bribed and bought and sold and coerced ultimately by the Federal Reserve System. And that's ultimately what it is. It was a nationwide coup, because they were able to just buy off the not only the economy, but the political system as well, as we've talked about many times. But anyway, Trump is exposing this all for everyone to see. And these people know it, hence their increased desperation and sophomore childish behavior that will only continue to get worse as Trump keeps exposing them and continues to slay the head of the beast. Now, people may be saying, but there is a recovery. There's a deadly head wound that is recovered. And that is true. And maybe we can talk about that on future shows. And I believe that's coming towards the end of the year. And
definitely.
That kind of fits in with my narrative. Unfortunately, that when the Russians and the Chinese get wind of this and see the maniacs really running the nation, after they get rid of Trump in whatever capacity, they will get rid of him. And I don't really care to speculate on that right now, although I have on past shows, but use your imagination. But anyway, there will be a recovery of that head wound of the beast and the beast system. Okay, and then things are going to get really interesting in the Russians and the Chinese and other nations. And I'm not saying those nations are perfect, by the way, but will not be amused. And then I think that will segue into my breakdown of Revelation 17 and 18. So this is just how I think I see things going. I'm not happy about it. I'm constantly reading and going through and pouring through the Old and New Testament and putting the pieces of this together. So, and I'm certainly no biblical scholar. I don't profess to have a theology degree or anything like that, but be that as it may, that's the way I see things going. Now, of course, juxtaposed on all of this is this coronavirus that's emanating out of China. Okay, and we discussed that at length last week. So, that's going back to Matthew 24, I think that's the beginning of the diverse diseases, wars. We're starting to hear of wars and rumors of wars. Okay, we're starting to see those rumblings, Turkey and Syria. And in fact, this coronavirus, just depending on which, and I'm not talking about mainstream news, it depends on which, respected scholar you listen to, not the people you see on Fox News, because, Fox News ultimately toes the government line. Hannity and the rest of the, Republican diehards notwithstanding, anyway, you got to go out and research this stuff, and it appears that, and I'm of the opinion, again, it's just my opinion, that the coronavirus is man-made.
That's what we talked about. Yeah, that's what we talked about last week, and
so
true. Yeah.
What I'm getting at is it's possible, and I'm not saying this is true, but circumstantial evidence. It's not. I don't think it would be an invalid conclusion to say that maybe it was an accident. Maybe China released it on purpose. Maybe it was part of, they're looking to take over the United States with some kind of microbiological Pearl Harbor. And people say, oh, that's crazy, this and that. I mean, is it crazy? I mean, Genghis Khan, these, go back, Hitler, Stalin, Mao. You think these people would have stopped? You think Stalin would have stopped at 100 million, and now, 100 million would have stopped at Hitler? These people would have stopped it. They learned, curtailed by outside forces and all this sort of thing. So I don't think it's completely outlandish. And then, of course, we must ask, where the Chinese got this technology from. And the only ones really that were most into this type of study and manipulating viruses and diseases and genetic manipulations is right here in the United States. The Un-American Genocidal Complex. Right. I talked about it in my book. So, we're getting to a point where we have all this insanity, and then on top of all this, you just have a general a feeling, I guess, that's pervasive throughout society of people just essentially going crazy. Literally people screaming in the streets. There's this issue, what was it, down in Florida, where this guy didn't like Trump people, so he tried to run him over with his van while he was filming it. And I'm not deifying Trump, okay? That's not what I'm saying. People need to be aware of that. I just want to make sure that that's clear. But anyway, I think what Trump is, I think these people are literally being driven insane. I think it, and I think it,
right.
and that,
right.
That reflects of Matthew chapter 8, and the Gadarene, the madman, the Gadarene madman was demonically possessed, and there's nothing else to do with him, until Jesus come along, of course, and healed him. But before that, he was locked. They stuck him out in the middle of the desert and tied him in chains. And I think there's a lot of that going on. I think these people are literally, they've rejected God. God's rejected them. So it's a mutual kind of divorce. Zechariah chapter 11 for starters. But anyway, and now they're they got the kings and the gods that they asked for, just like 1 Samuel chapter 8, except in this case, where in 1 Samuel chapter 8, it was a physical king in terms of King Saul. Here they got the king that they really want, which is King Kronos, or the Apollyon of Revelation chapter 9 and his minions. And just like in Matthew chapter 8, I think a lot of this is the source of a lot of this insanity. So, again, I mean, I guess I've been kind of rambling.
No, you haven't been. But I mean, when you talk about just the coronavirus and different things that are going on, you have to shake your head. Possible Trump impeachment, all these things, and we continue to go down deeper and deeper into immoral territory. We're close. If based on your predictions, we're very close. Diseases is part of the whole revolution as well. Diseases, and there you go. There goes one right there.
Yeah. Well, that's Matthew chapter 24, and again, in one sense, I mean, I hate that I'm skeptical. To just say the word funny, but it is kind of comical watching, say, Nancy Pelosi trying to get up there and explain how she's praying and prayerful. Ms. Multi-millionaire, Ms. Hypocrite, and Ms. partial birth abortion supporter, and she has the audacity to get up there and say she's praying to God about Trump's sham impeachment. I mean, these people are shot, but it's almost comical now to watch them as Trump, whose IQ apparently is like 150, 160. The guy's like a genius, running circles around these buffoons. And they really are a bunch of buffoons, Nadler and Schiff and Schumer. I mean, I just don't think these are particularly bright people. I think Sanders, they went to their colleges, got their political science degrees, and went right into politics, and they're just salespeople ultimately. They're just slimy salespeople that sell people a bill of crap, and they're able to pay for it with fake Federal Reserve notes, and they're bought and sold. And this is what they do. And now that Trump, a legitimate president, and presidents aren't supposed to be legitimate. The last one that tried to be legitimate was JFK. I mean, maybe Reagan to an extent, but JFK was the last one. And we also what happened to him, Andrew Jackson back in 1832. He successfully took on the Federal Reserve System at the time. The Rothschild, it was really directly controlled by the Rothschild at that time, but and they tried to assassinate him. So many congressmen throughout the 20th century. Louis McFadden, there was a congressman by the name of Larry McDonald. He was on a flight, I remember, in 1983, I think it was. I think I was a freshman in high school. Korean Airlines was all of a sudden that flight, somehow mysteriously went over in Russian airspace, and the Russians shot it down, and all kinds of mysterious deaths. Joe McCarthy, the great Joe McCarthy, all right, of people in Congress that have risen up, and of course JFK, who I mentioned, have risen up to fight this. But that aside, I mean, these people, these sellouts, that's what they are. They're a bunch of putzes. I mean, they're clowns, and we're seeing it live on, we're seeing it unfold. We're seeing their very sanity leave these people each day on TV. And of course, I'll conclude with this. I mean, look at the Democratic presidential clown show. I mean, in my opinion, anybody dumb enough to still take these people seriously, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but you can't take this. It's not possible people are that stupid. To take these clown car of candidates seriously. This Klobuchar, apparently she's up in the polls, but I think the only reason she's up is because the other people are so bad. I mean, it's just like she's like the best choice of a bunch of worse choices. What are they going to do against Trump? What is Sanders going to say? He's going to slobber and say, "Oh, we're going to give you everything for free." Blah blah blah. Trump will run circles around this idiot, and that's what they're so scared of. And then I'm telling you, they're scared because they know they can't beat Trump legitimately, and that's why I think again that's the political headwind. And once, let me conclude with this. Let me say it like this. Trump has proven that the presidency of the country and the government of the country can really work for the people. He's not some Bush, Clinton, Obama putz that just sits there and pushes paper and says things can never get better. And meanwhile, he's actively selling out the country, getting us involved in fake wars and sending our industry to China. Trump's reversing all that, okay? And he's proving that their presidents can really get things done with the right mindset if they're not bought and sold. And the swamp or whatever you want to call the establishment, they recognize this. And this is why they're so scared of him. And this is why they will,
Right.
unfortunately, literally, possibly literally, and I don't want to speculate, but look to take the man's life, just like they did with JFK. I just think in that desperation, and then, and then from there, we can pick it up
crazy.
next week.
No, Rob, I understand your frustration, and we'll figure out what happens next week, okay?
All right, Neil. Talk to you later, man.
Take care, all right?
Thanks.
That was the Rob Roselli Show, everyone.
Hello, and welcome to Safety Talk. I am your host and personal safety expert, Pete Canavan, and I am joined by social media expert and branding expert, Neil Haley. Neil, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Pete. It's great to be connecting. I can't believe we're very, very close. I guess today's the first day of fall, so exciting times for sure. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Cool. So we always start the show off with some safety news, and just want to talk about how our daily lives can because we called Javon Sneed, who died yesterday in Texas. Don't know what happened or why, but they don't suspect any foul play. But, here's somebody who's young and in shape, and they're dead. No reason why, just some kind of crazy thing. And strangely enough, also in Texas, over 100 miles an hour, and hit something, and now she has left the country music community, one singer less. So, nobody's invincible. We have to be aware of what we have control over, and we're going to be talking about today's guest, and really dive into some very interesting information. So our guest today earned his PhD in school psychology from Texas A&M University. He also completed his clinical training at Harvard Medical School. He has a postdoctorate in clinical psychology from Brown University's Alpert Medical School as well. Now, like many people in the mental health working community, he was drawn into that field as a result of his own difficult past. He was raised in a poor single-parent home and out of life. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Power of a Teacher, which I'll have to get my wife, and Neil's a teacher as well. And his book is something I know our audience would be interested in. Sure. But his new book is something very, very interesting, and we're going to be talking a lot about that today. And the title is EQ Intervention, Shaping a Self-Aware Generation Through Social and Emotional Learning. And this book is scheduled for release this coming spring, so I'm looking forward to giving you all a sneak peek into that with today's guest. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Adam Saenz to Safety Talk. Welcome, Doc. Welcome, Doc. How are you?
Good. It's good to be with you tonight. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk a bit about your expertise as someone. Obviously, you have an advanced doctorate in school psychology, and it's got to be something that's been very interesting. I can only imagine what you've seen, experienced, and observed in today's youth, and how it relates to psychology, and how really social media is really shaping a generation.
Yeah.
Now, I did some research for today's interview because, everybody knows what IQ is, right? Intelligence quotient, how smart you are supposedly. But not everybody's familiar with EQ. And so just that, stands for emotional quotient, right?
Exactly.
I found this pretty interesting because, as I said, I didn't really know much about it, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's essentially the capability of individuals to recognize their own emotions, recognize the emotions of other people's, being able to sort of discern, between the different feelings, and then to use that information to guide their thinking, to guide their behavior, and then help them adapt to situations and people, and even help them achieve their goals in life, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's it. That's exactly what it is.
Now, it's so important, and I mean, maybe would you say it's even more important than IQ at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your task, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of research that's showing, even in the corporate world, that emotional intelligence, people who do well in professional settings, IQ is an important factor, but EQ is by far the driving factor, from whether you're entry-level position, mid-management, to upper C-suite position. it's emotional intelligence really that's the determining factor. So it's absolutely critical.
See,
So
wow. I mean, I was going to add real quick to that, Pete. When I hear something like that, then why are we always focusing on the other intelligence instead of the emotional? And how we,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what happens is IQ, cognitive ability, has really gotten that's sort of the sexy front runner. We have a lot of intelligence tests, lots of movies about IQ that feature people that are intellectually gifted. It's just a great topic to cover. But the research shows that
information, but let's hear a little more from you.
Yeah, I grew up in a single parent home down in South Texas. It was there are about 3,200 counties in the United States. This was just out of her league and not equipped. And, I ended up running the streets with my friends. And she couldn't really, she didn't know what to do with me. So I ended up living with a family several hundred miles away from where I grew up. And the bottom line was that in this new town that I lived in, I had some amazing teachers that back, 35 years ago when emotional intelligence wasn't even a thing, they were living it. That's just who they were as human beings. Of their teachers that they could have said, you know what, they don't pay me enough to put up with a kid like that, and they would have been right. But man, by God's grace, they chose to intervene, and they said, we are going to do everything in our power to make sure where I'm investing my life now.
That's awesome. Teachers definitely have the ability to make such a positive impact. I mean, my wife's a teacher. She teaches second grade.
Yes,
and
definitely.
School part of their day is their best part of their day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really sad, but when you put that in perspective and you can, really try to get these kids to open up, you try to get them to relate, you try to get them to understand, you try to let them know that, hey, you're there for them. Sort of as I'm sure, your teachers were with you when you were younger, and it's a very, very difficult thing, and it's getting harder and harder every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is, this emotional intelligence is made up of basically 5 different pieces. But I think the most important, as individuals, our success, our success in our chosen profession depends on sort of that EQ, as you were saying, right? From the lowest levels of a business all the way up to the C-level management, and, how to interpret people. We can't lash out. We have to do it with tact and with grace. And there are a lot of things that, if we don't do it properly, success can elude us. So with regard to the problem of, I don't know if it's based on social media, but, emotional intelligence, from what I've found, and we talked about this before we started here, is basically made up of self-awareness, which is obviously super important. Self-regulation, right? Our ability to regulate ourselves and our self-control. Motivation, be able to motivate ourselves, because, it's kind of a fallacy to say that, somebody's going to motivate you. No, they can come up with a way that you can motivate yourself, perhaps. But and then empathy, right? Because we have to, realize and recognize people, the feelings behind what they're doing. But of course, then the 5th one is the social skills.
Yeah.
And in today's world, we're so interconnected with technology, but not necessarily with the social skills to interact one-on-one or one-to-many in a meeting environment, in a team environment, or even with others. So what is your sort of insights, if you would, into that portion of how our social skills are impacted positively or negative by technology? And is that causing problems with the rise in some of the things we're seeing in schools today, with student aggression and with shootings and violence and that sort of thing? It's a kind of a big question, but try to bring it all together for you there.
Yeah, and I hear 2 questions with the role of social media and how that's impacting how the next generation is connecting. And then the second one is, what is the relationship between social and emotional learning and aggression in schools? They're connected questions, but 2 questions. I think I don't see it as either or. I don't necessarily think that social media is a bad thing. I mean, we're moving into an ever increasingly digital life, and I think that'll be the norm. And I think that the young kids, digital connection will be their mainstay. So that I absolutely believe that, through texting and instant messaging and all that. Where they lack, though, is when you're at a counter and you're buying something and you've got a 16-year-old kid that, like you said, doesn't really know how to make good eye contact, doesn't know how to use language and words. That on pure skills is limiting. And it's just something that we as parents and we as educators need to be mindful of. Are we instructing our young generation in these basic interpersonal skills, making eye contact, using vocal tone? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, social media is not going to do that.
No.
And what's really interesting is that you have kids that grow up understanding emotions from emoticons, which is good at some level. But the question is, what does that look like in a person, a real live human being? How do you know when somebody's angry or sad or happy or confused? We don't have emoticon faces necessarily, and if we're not in tune with each other, we're going to miss that. So that's sort of how I see the social media piece of it impacting social skills. It's a good thing to have, but it does miss that warm body, face-to-face component,
it definitely
which is
does.
essential.
Now, and the reason I think it is because parents a lot of times are allowing their kids to connect so much. They're always on digital, or they're involved in activities as we're becoming so overscheduled that we don't practice the dinner table, asking questions. Yeah. And a lot of times parents are not sitting down with their kids doing their homework and holding a conversation. Just listening, how was your day? The old school thing of how's your day? And to kind of describe things and give kids, honestly, sometimes we don't give them enough opportunity to speak, right? So, Doctor, what I was talking about, specifically enough, we're not having those conversations anymore with our children and developing that skill set to have a back and forth conversation. Social media does not give you that back and forth conversation of how, as you said, talked about eye contact. There's not as many opportunities in presenting themselves in specific ways and involving adult conversations. They can get glued to their phones and glued to their screens that they really don't interact with their parents or loved ones or other adults. So it's our job as parents to make sure we have those conversations. We really look at those interpersonal skills so that they're able to communicate in that way and not just this quick text message or, hey, I'm going to think about it way. Not like immediate. That's the other thing. In social media or in texting with young people today, it's not an immediate response. It sometimes takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute, where when you have to hold a conversation, it has to be back and forth very quickly.
It's definitely something that's tough. I mean, I do that with my kids all the time, where when they come home from school or from wherever they work or whatever, it's like, hey, how was work? Hey, how was school? And I don't just let them say good. I say, no. You know what I mean? It's like, tell me a little bit what happened. Were you busy
absolutely.
at work? Were you not busy at work? Everything went good. No pain in the neck customers. Whatever it happens to be. You try to engage them a little bit more and get them to, sometimes it's like pulling teeth, right?
Exactly.
But it's extremely important as parents, I think, to do that, because they're not getting all of that from their peers. I mean, if your kids are, like my middle one, he's out all the time. He's always with his friends. He's not on the computer much. He's not on the Xbox or anything. He's out fishing, hunting, playing football, playing frisbee, going out, taking his truck, whatever. He's out doing things. And I love that effect, you know what I mean? Because he's out there doing things and he's building those skills of interacting and dealing with people. And I know he's going to be tremendously successful as a result of it. Right. And, we were talking about the difference between how EQ versus IQ, and how one can be that much more important than the other, right? EQ, but yet, like Neil mentioned, the emphasis is on the intelligence part of it. Where'd you go to school? What are your grades, et cetera, et cetera. But you could be brilliant and not be able to articulate your thoughts. And what good are you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
So getting back to the student aggression side of it, where, maybe some of these things are causing some of the problems that we're seeing? Because I'd like to try to focus a little bit more on that side of it. What is it that maybe we've tried in the past to address that problem of student aggression?
Well, what we've tried in the past in schools is rooted in what's called behavioral psychology. So if you ever had just a basic undergrad psychology course, think of behavioral psychology as Pavlov with the dogs, right? It's all about antecedent behavior and consequence, stimulus, classical conditioning. And the core of that is, let me find things about you that bring you pain, things you like and things you don't like. And I'm going to use those things to shape your behavior. So in schools, things that students like are extra computer time or social status, things they don't like, theoretically, office referrals, suspensions, right? So those are basic carrots and sticks that we have in schools to shape behavior. The problem with that model is that those carrots and sticks, they don't work on this generation. Kids don't care about the carrots that we're offering. They're not big enough. They're not sweet enough. And the sticks don't scare them anymore. You know, like one kid said, go ahead and suspend me. Last time you suspended me, my mom picked me up. We got ice cream and I got to go watch cartoons, so paid vacation, right? So the sticks don't work anymore. And what we're realizing is that what we need is something relational. We need an approach that allows us to connect with kids in a meaningful, deep way that's beyond sticks and carrots. And that's social emotional learning. That's emotional intelligence.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have these kids that we're trying to sort of come at them with something that we hope will promote positive behavior. And so the traditional ways of doing so aren't working. So what are our options really right now?
The main option is relational. It's not how do I punish or reward the student? The question is, how do I build a relationship with student? Because students are much more likely to respond to adults that they feel connected to. Social emotional learning and emotional intelligence is the roadmap to building relationships with kids. We start with ourselves as adults before knowing ourselves and regulating ourselves as adults and being adults that are managing emotions. Kids see that and they learn from that. They're learning from us anyway, but this allows us to be the best version of ourselves so that we can be good examples for students. They respect that, they admire that, and they're drawn into that through relationship. And then we, in turn, through our own empathy as adults, can understand their stories and their struggles and their pain, which gives us more patience and empathy for them. We don't get as frustrated with them, and we're much more willing to come alongside of them and be a support to them.
It's interesting because I was just hearing on the news, or I read an article or something about how so many of the youth today feel like, why are they even doing what they're doing?
Right.
Like they feel like the world is not going in the direction that they like. And of course, I blame the media for a lot of these negative portrayals. They feel like they've got to go completely the opposite of what's out there today, thinking that whatever is different must be better, and we can take that any way we want. You look at that in the political arena with, how there's so much interest now in socialism, which is scared as the crap out of me, right? Because people just don't understand, but they think, well, you know what, something's got to be better because what's out there right now isn't working. And so that sort of lack of caring and that attitude of, well, it doesn't matter anyway what I do or how I perform, etc., is really scary.
Yeah, it really is. And if there's one thing we want our youth to understand, it's that their voice matters, their decisions matter, their choice matters, and they really can make a positive impact. That cynicism that you're describing is scary is a good word for it.
Right. That's the problem in a lot of ways, is that everybody's been handed things in their lives at different times now, young people, that They think that everything should be easy and nothing hard. Doctor, how do you kind of express that to teach that EQ, as you talked about how important that emotional intelligence is versus, psychologically, they're really intelligent. They're going to be performing great levels. They have the greatest intelligence, but once they get to a job where there's a boss or some person that expects huge results and the pressure comes and the stress comes, they're not used to that. They're not used to the specific things. And that's where it causes a lot of people with depression and different things like that. So what can we do in that situation to deal with those for young people to deal with this, especially when it becomes challenging and it's not going to be as easy as everything that came easy to them their whole lives?
Well, I think that the key there is for schools to practice systematic social and emotional learning curriculum. And basically what that means is for schools to have dedicated times to teach young men, young women, primary and secondary students about emotions, essentially. What are they and how do I manage them effectively? When I'm frustrated, it's okay to be frustrated, but what can I do with that feeling to make my life better? When I'm angry, it's okay to be angry, but what can I do to use that anger to make my life better and the lives of the people around me better? So the big picture, the big idea, the roadmap is to help understand, as the great Fred Rogers said, all emotions are mentionable and all emotions are manageable. That's our goal, is to help kids understand that whatever your feeling is, whatever your emotion is, there's a way to harness that emotion to make your life better.
Yes.
That's so true, because there are so many things that we have to contend with today. And, anger is something that's natural. We all get angry from time to time, but whatever it happens to be, we also get sad. We're happy, we're joyous. I mean, that our emotions, run from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and understanding how we can harness that to, first of all, understand that it is normal, right?
Yeah.
And then secondly, how do we take that and turn that into something that can be fuel for our fire, right? They can drive us forward. They can, be that catalyst that maybe, causes some change to happen, or, enables us to get to the next level by saying, you know what, I'm not going to let, X, Y, and Z bother me. They're kids out there, or just watch some interview with a football player, and he's like, you know what, I love it when people tell me I can't do something.
Yes.
Because then I go and prove them wrong. And I'm like, you know what, I love it.
Yes.
Because it's so true. Now, so basically, in a nutshell, this, our emotional intelligence quotient, our EQ, it's our ability to understand other people. It's our ability to understand what motivates them. It's what, what we can use to understand them so that we can work with them, right? And these are all things that are imperative for success, no matter, what it is that you're trying to do. The 5 categories of what's, defined in EQ are our self-awareness, right? And that's, of course, our ability to recognize those emotions as they're happening to us, right? Because we're talking just about emotions right now. So that can be very difficult for people because it forces them to tune into their feelings.
Yes.
And so many people, I think, are not tuned into their feelings. And that's probably the reason why we have so many emotional support animals out there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think you're exactly right.
If you think about it, it's crazy. And now they're causing all kinds of problems for people because they're bringing these animals in places they shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. So, that's a big problem, I think. And so, obviously, so that's first. And then being able to regulate those controls so that we don't fall into some extreme anxiety or some extreme depression. We've got to be able to be strong enough that we can control the emotions that we're experiencing to a certain extent, because if we don't, then they're going to control us.
Right.
So, that's, and that, again, I think there are a lot of people that they turn to medication, they turn to drugs, they turn to other things that they can say, well, this is the problem I'm having, and I'm doing this for it, and it's not working, and so it's the fault of the medicine or whatever. It's not my fault. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. We have to
the percent
really be
one thing, Pete, I was covering
we just
today.
have to be, we have to be,
Right.
we have to be in control of our own things. We have to accept that responsibility. I mean,
Isn't there what percentage
Go
I
on,
was
Neil.
hearing about, doctor? I was hearing about specifically certain percentages of kids and adults that have some sort of mental disorder at one point in their lives. It's a huge percent, isn't it?
Well, I know that the Institute of Mental Health did a survey in 2016, and 1 in 5, 20% of teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17 will experience a severe, not mild and not moderate, but severe mental disorder. And out of that 20%, only half will get treatment. Less than half will get treatment for it.
Because of that stigma, for sure.
Partially because of the stigma, and partially because there just aren't not enough service providers.
Truly, yeah.
That's a huge percentage.
In my clinic in College Station here in Texas, we have 25 mental health professionals on our staff, and we get on a slow day we'll get 15 phone calls. On a busy day we'll get 30 requesting therapy, and most therapists, a full caseload for them is 20 clients a week, maybe 25 clients a week. So you can imagine if you're getting, 15, 20 phone calls a day, you'll fill a therapist up in a month, right? And once 25 therapists are filled, then you just can't take anymore. And the calls keep coming, So it's just a difficult situation. You have a high need population, but you just don't have the qualified professionals to meet the need. Which is why, our focus is really working with teachers, because the reality is that schools are now becoming the front lines of mental health intervention. It used to be an outpatient clinic or a mental health hospital, but it's the schools now. And we want to empower teachers with an emotional intelligence skill set to meet their students' needs.
Yes.
And we're not trying to make teachers mental health professionals or therapists or counselors, but we always tell teachers, you do not have to be a thoracic surgeon to perform CPR. And sometimes CPR can save a person's life. And you do not have to be a psychologist or a licensed clinical social worker to provide some basic social emotional learning, basic EQ to kids that can be hugely, hugely helpful to them. So that's our angle, is we want to empower teachers because they're on the front lines.
I agree.
Yeah,
totally.
And my wife's a teacher, and I would agree with you 110% that she is definitely acting like a mental health professional in many respects without wanting to, simply because she has no choice, because the children have so many issues. She has 28 in her second grade class. 9 of them are emotional or learning support.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it's crazy. The numbers are crazy.
And it's only the trend is that it's only gonna get more intense. Kids are coming to schools at a younger and younger age with greater levels of psychopathology as never before. The acronym VUCA, VUCA, is used, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that is the world that kids are living in today. And because the American culture is increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, our level of anxiety is rising, and our levels of depression are rising as a result of that.
And that's kind of what I was saying before, that there's this level of uncertainty and this level of, I don't see where, I'm going to fit in. I don't see how, things are going to be when I'm an adult. And I think it sends a lot of these kids into a state of depression that they have a hard time coming out of, because they're not being shown that there is a better way. And, whether it's a teacher or a professional such as yourself, we need to be able to provide empathy for these people and let them know, look, this is not the end of the road here. There's a big, bright future out there for you. And you've got to sort of take and figure out why the person feels that way, and then turn around and be like, look, this is normal, but we need to, change how you're thinking of things, because there is a better way. And it's difficult.
It really is. In 2011, Joseph Durlock, a researcher at Loyola, he did this huge meta-analysis looking at social emotional programs in schools and basically asked the question, do they really work? And he looked at about 1,213 programs, K-12 across the board, all kinds of different schools and programs. And he found absolute resounding evidence that these programs work. Not only do they decrease aggression, but they increase pro-social interaction. Kids are interacting with each other in good ways. So there's the behavioral benefit. Kids, because they're more regulated and more in control behaviorally and socially, they make academic gains, which is great. And then the last thing is teachers that implement these programs, they're more sustainable. They feel more in control of their own lives. They're managing their stress more effectively. They're more in tune with themselves.
Yes.
And it just allows them to process their emotion as adults, because there's what we refer to in the mental health field. If you work with patients or kids that come from traumatic backgrounds, there's what we call the secondhand smoke. And if you work with kids in trauma long enough, eventually it's traumatizing to the adult. And so the adult then needs self-awareness and self-regulation and empathy. So again, social emotional learning, emotional intelligence is it's just a good thing for everybody on so many different fronts. It's good for adults, it's good for kids, and the science just absolutely backs it up.
And
so how would you take and turn that around now for the teacher to help the teachers from getting burned out? Because they're out there, as we were just talking about, they're one of the ones that are on the front lines. They're dealing with the students. They're trying to, provide empathy for them. They're trying to help them build their social skills. They're trying to motivate them. They're trying to do all of these things in addition to teaching them, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So how, what would you say the relationship there is between that emotional, IQ and teacher?
It's very high, and what we do in my book, the EQ intervention, I talk a lot about our work in schools. My colleagues at Texas A&M and I developed a personality measure called the EASEL, which is EASEL. It stands for the Educator Assessment of Social Emotional Learning. And when we work on campuses with educators, with teachers, we have them take our personality test online, and it measures their personality style, it measures their capacity for emotional intelligence, and it measures their vulnerability to stress. And we use that to help them understand, based on their personalities, which students are going to be easy for them and which are going to be challenging for them, based on their own strengths and weaknesses, and what they can do to modulate that and minimize the liabilities. We give them stress management coping plans based on the fight or flight response. So who are the people you need to be reaching out to? How can you pull back and reflect on your practice as an educator? So we spend a full day before we even commission teachers to begin to implement this work with students. We guide them through a full day experience where they learn to implement it for themselves. And the feedback we're getting, it's across the board. Teachers are saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We understand that we're here for kids, but good Lord, nobody is asking how we're doing, So we want the teachers to be sustainable. We want them to bring their A game. We want them to feel loved, encouraged, seen, and heard, because the best intervention for every student, the best intervention, bar none, is a healthy adult in the classroom.
Yes.
And that's the starting point.
It's so true, the starting point. And if they're not healthy, we look at those needs, right? Maslow hierarchy of needs. You're not going to be able to teach a student unless they feel good about themselves, unless they trust in themselves. They're not thinking about their home life. They're not thinking about what's happening when they're getting bullied. They're really just, their focus can be on school. And that doesn't happen with a lot of kids. But by teaching them how to deal with these things through mental health strategies and different programs it sounds like that we need to have more and more of these programs for kids, less kids will commit suicide, and we'll have more kids that feel happy about themselves.
Absolutely. And less students will have to resort to violence as a way to express their emotion.
So the book is coming out in the spring. It's called The EQ Intervention, Shaping a Self-Aware Generation Through Social and Emotional Learning. So is the book targeted towards teachers?
Primarily, that's the main audience, educators.
Educators, and getting them to basically understand, like, you were just saying, this teacher saying to you, thank you for, having something that's actually addressing me and the stresses that I'm under, trying to
Yes.
teach these skills and teach these
Right.
kids.
Right. And once the teachers master that, then we guide them through, okay, now this is how you model it for students. These are practical things you can do for students to help them understand their self-awareness and their self-regulation.
Right. I'm going to put a debate out here really quickly about what about the therapy that they're implementing in school districts, I think in New York area, where they all have to go through, the teachers have to teach mental health strategies to their kids in 5th grade. Doctor, what is your thought process on that? Do you think that they need a book like yourself to go ahead and utilize? They're coming up with saying that they have to plan it into their curriculum. The concern I have is a lot of times we are forced to do certain standards, and yet we're not trained enough to be able to implement them in the classroom, and then we do the wrong things that could be a detriment towards that student.
I think you're right. I think it's a great initiative. It's a great idea. But it's a bad idea if we're not going to empower educators to be successful with it. So if we count the cost and really, really devote the time and the resources necessary to appropriately train educators, it's great. But if not, then it's probably not going to be very helpful for anyone. It's probably just going to be overwhelming, really.
Yeah, when we force something as a teacher, we usually they jam it down our throats that we have to plan it, and we still have to hit all the benchmarks of assessments and all these different things. It's not done well. You really have to get a teacher buy-in. That's the big thing, Pete.
Yeah.
And Pete, you know that when you train too. When you train groups of people, they have to buy into what you believe in. And if they don't, they're never going to implement it, are they, Pete?
No, exactly right. I mean, you as a teacher, my wife is a teacher, Adam is, an educator. It's very important that we get the right, points across to get people to move in the direction that we want them to. And it's not easy, and it's getting tougher every single day. And so, I mean, something like this is awesome, because it's going to help the teachers understand what they can do to be more effective, to help this generation that needs hope. They need understanding, they need empathy, and most of all, they need goals and dreams that they can shoot for, and let them know that, look, these are, anything you want to do, you can do. These things are realistic, and it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters where you want to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit it.
Yeah.
It's great points for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. I mean, Adam, you have something on the website about a culture architect.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting, because you say that that cultures, just like individual personalities, right? They're going to grow, either be as by design or by accident, right? By chance. Right. Yeah. And we don't want things to be shaped by chance. We want to be shaping the future of our country, of the world, of our next generation by design. We shape our children as best as we can as parents. All 3 of us are parents. And, can we do a better job? Of course, everybody can do a better job. We just do the best job that we can, and hope that we do the right thing by our children, so that they grow up to be productive, successful members of society. But so many children out there don't have parents that give them the attention that they deserve. Maybe they come from a broken home. There's only one parent there, so there's only one role model, and that role model is busy half the time because they're working all the time to put food on the table. And so they have these challenges that other people have to sort of fill the void, and we hope that the people that are filling that void for them are doing it in a positive way and not in a negative way. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that negativity. I mean, look what's going on in places like Chicago, where you have these gang killings on a daily basis. The number of deaths is skyrocketing. These kids have zero appreciation or respect for human life, and they do whatever they want because they feel there's going to be no consequences, and who really cares anyway, because whatever, they feel the world's going to end tomorrow. And it's crazy the way that they're looking at their future. They're not looking at it a way that's healthy.
No, I think you're exactly right. It is it's alarming. There's no two ways about it.
So what else can we do to to shape our culture in a positive way, other than what's being done or can be done in the schools and through, workshops such as what you're getting out there to people. I mean, what are your thoughts on what else can be done?
I think that the main thing that can be done apart from what professionals are doing in the field is just for the person who's a educator, parent, is just to let kids know. Well, I said number one, to be self-aware and be self-regulated. Be mindful of yourself. What am I thinking and feeling right now, and am I doing a good job controlling it the way that it needs to be? Just by living that and modeling that to kids, I mean, that goes such a long way. And then the second thing is letting kids know that it's okay to feel, especially young men. We're young men are just, we're trained that feelings are, you're a sissy or some kind of pejorative term if you have feelings, and boys don't cry and you need to suck it up. And maybe there's a time and a place for being tough, but gosh, man, if we're training boys, or anyone for that matter, to repress emotion, that's just a recipe for disaster. So just giving young men and young women too, but certainly young men, giving them the freedom to feel. And it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss somebody. That's a huge way to shape culture, to shape the next generation.
I think what you need to do is come up with a kids version of EQ intervention and turn it into an app.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that be something? Yeah, for sure.
Because then it becomes, then you can sort of have it so that the children and the kids and the students, and the younger generation, put some of the onus on them as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Anything we can do to help kids self-regulate and own their own emotion and engage that independently, that's a step in the right direction.
Fantastic. Very interesting information. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
And basically, if anybody's interested in learning more about you, they can go to your website, right? AdamSigns.com.
That's right. Yes.
We'll have that link out there, and it's Signs spelled SAENZ. So right. A little bit different. Any last thoughts for our audience there, Dr. Adam?
Well, no. I mean, I said no. Yes, I do actually. First, thank you again for the invitation. It's been great to be with you both. Last thoughts are, I feel like this is just my clinical intuition. I can't argue for science behind it, but I feel like we are in some of the toughest times we've ever been in as a country, and I don't know that it's going to get better. But I also know, I think that because the darkness is so dark, man, the light's just going to shine even lighter than it ever has. And so in the midst of all the stress, we are positioned to really raise the most self-aware generation that we've ever known, and so I just want to encourage your listeners, when they're discouraged, feeling overwhelmed, that's understandable. But also remember, how can I light a candle? How can I be a light to the youth of America? How can I help kids understand how to know their feelings and regulate them? And how can I model that for them? There's still so much good that can be done.
Agree.
Absolutely. We have to end on a positive note, of course. So that's awesome, and really appreciate your time. And for anybody interested in learning more, you can visit his Dr. Adam's website. And really thank you for being on, and thanks for the listeners for tuning in to Safety Talk. And you can always get past episodes in addition to this episode at our website, safetytalkpodcast.com, and our videos are on our YouTube channel at safetytalkvideos.com. We're also found on all major podcast networks. So download our show and subscribe, and stay in the loop on the latest in safety and security and how to protect yourself, your family, and your future.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in this afternoon. We got you past the 5 o'clock hour, and now we're beyond 6 o'clock. Listen, real quick, we are going to be doing a live stream show tonight. Go to Facebook, The George Espenlaub Show. Go to Facebook, The George Espenlaub Show. We will be streaming live into Facebook, and we'll be streaming live into Twitter tonight. So join us. Maxine, no stranger to the show, been here several times. She's coming on tonight to make a very special announcement. Maxine is going to be taking on another venture, and she's going to make the announcement tonight. She's going to crank it up a notch. And so let's all get on there and support Maxine. I think that you'll love her. If you've never seen her, she's a character, for lack of a better term. But nonetheless, join me tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for our live stream show on Facebook. Go to Facebook, The George Espenlaub Show, and we'll be streaming live into there at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll be streaming live into Twitter at the same time. So join us tonight. And come in and leave your comments and questions, and I think you'll be delighted as you watch and listen and see Maxine as she makes her very important announcement tonight. So join us. And then, not long after Maxine leaves us on our live stream tonight, we will be back live right here on the radio for our Friday night show. So please join me again. And I trust that wherever you're at, if it's daytime, have a great day. If it's already nighttime, have a wonderful evening and a wonderful night. But regardless of where you are and what time it is, I want to remind each and every one of you, be kind to one another, care for one another, love one another, pat somebody on the back, give them a great big smile, and don't ever be afraid to tell someone that you love them. It could make all the difference in the world. And so I'll see you on the live stream tonight, the George Espenlaub Show at Facebook. And then we'll be back here on the radio not long after that. So thank you for tuning in, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world. From all of us here at the Funny Farm, thank you. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you later tonight on our live stream. I trust and pray that God will keep you right in the center of His hand.